Ladies and gents, welcome back. I hate to burst your bubble. I know you're going to the grocery store and you're seeing prices going up. You're seeing the price of fuel and energy and everything going up around you. The cost of living is going through the roof here in Canada. But hey, Statistics Canada says inflation is down. I almost got that out with a straight face. No, here's CBC actually saying just that.
You will probably have not noticed this as you try to make ends meet, but the annual rate of inflation is down to its lowest level in almost a year. And would you believe the fight against skyrocketing prices is a quarter of the way to its goal? Jeannie Lee is here with more now. So Jeannie, sounds like...
Anyway, before we get into Jeannie Lee, yeah, we've heard this before. Inflation's not as high as it's going to be. Oh, it's just around the corner. We're coming right to a recovery. Yeah, we've been hearing this for years. Anyway, here's the CBC's article. Canada's inflation rate slowed to 5.9 in January, but food costs continue to rise. Now, it slowed from 5.9 from upwards of above 8%. They were reporting 8.7%, I believe it was. And wait, no, most people are arguing that those numbers were flubbed and they were actually a lot higher than even at that. Mortgage, interest rate costs, grocery prices continue to rise. Canada's inflation rate slowed to 5.9% in January, Statistics Canada said on Tuesday. That number was lower than 6.2% that economists were expecting. However, they were expecting it to go that low. However, the price of groceries continued to accelerate at a faster pace than in December, the statistics agency reported. Mortgage interest rates continued to rise, clocking in at 21.2% in January as the Bank of Canada tries to tame inflation with higher interest rates. It marks the largest increase since September 1982. Now, the Bank of Canada, mind you, did say that they weren't going to raise interest rates anytime soon. This wasn't something that they were worried about at all. No, and then all of a sudden, boom, snap, there it is. Giving little conjecture here on Twitter saying the official inflation number falls to 5.9 in January, but prices keep soaring. Perhaps the official number is, well, a lie. Well, how do we get to these numbers in the first place? That's the big question. What is it that they use to measure this stuff? Well, it's considered the consumer price index, which is a basket of goods. What's a basket of goods? This is from Investopedia.com. Basket of goods, definition, CPI calculation, and an example. The Consumer Price Index, a common measure of inflation, measures the price change over time for a basket of goods and services. What's in the basket? What's in the basket? So we'll find out. The basket is representative of consumer spending patterns, and the change in its price represents the rate of inflation faced by consumers as a whole. For example, if the basket's price has increased by 5% in the course of a year, consumer inflation can be said to be running at 5% annual rate. The definition and contents of the measured basket can vary widely by country, and not just by country, but any given time. Now here, let's have a look here. So the consumer goods CPI index, the consumer price index basket of goods is here. It's broken up into a bunch of different things: transportation, recreation, culture, insurance, financial service, housing, health, furnishing, household equipment and services, food, non-alcoholic beverages. Alcoholic beverages are put over in another camp: education, communication, law, clothing, and footwear. Now, what happens when the interest rate starts going up and it makes the government look really bad, which is who runs Statistics Canada, by the way? What happens when that looks really bad? Well, they change some of the things in the baskets of goods. But we can't just change that. We can't just get rid of housing because it's too much. Well, what do? Well, we just change what we define as housing. We change what we define as health. When our healthcare goes way up in cost, our healthcare, I mean, how much are you really paying for it? Except unless you have, benefits that you don't have benefits with your work and you have to pay for prescriptions, things like that. Alcohol and tobacco, what they'll do is they'll move things in and out of this consumer price index. They started putting a lot more electronics in when electronics became cheaper to stave off the inflation numbers. Essentially is what they're doing. They're staving off inflation numbers. Food, non-alcoholic beverages. Well, they used to have a big old fat steak in there, maybe a T-bone. Not anymore. It's ground beef, but they're still counting it as beef. And that's really what you have to pay attention here when they're feeding you these numbers, and it gets pretty ridiculous. Now, here is Jeannie Lee giving us some examples of the things that have gone up and things that are not going up. And let's have a listen here.
Here are some of the effects of all of these forms of inflation. Food prices were up 10.4% last month. That is a 40-year high in terms of food inflation rate. Mortgage interest. Don't have to tell anyone with a variable rate mortgage that those interest rate costs have spiked by 21% plus. That is the sharpest increase since the these are nightmare days. Tell anybody of a certain age, 1982, and look at their reaction. What happened back then? So that is the biggest jump in, again, 40 years. Lower inflation, though, for things like gasoline, cell phone service, new cars, and in Alberta, energy prices because of some policy changes. In fact, Alberta has the lowest inflation rate in the land, and that's at 5%. So there is some headway here. And remember when I said that...
Okay, so there's some headway, and this is what I'm getting at with the basket of goods. So what they would like to do is take some of these things and move them around. Hey, Alberta's gas prices are pretty low. Isn't that fantastic? Let's lower the inflation number. We're staving off inflation, when in fact, that's not actually the case. That's not actually what's happening. I was recently in Alberta, and in Alberta, yes, the gas prices are far lower than they are here in British Columbia by 50 cents. By 50 full cents. In Alberta, when I was there, gas prices were $1.25 a liter. They're at $1.70, $1.75 here. It's ridiculous. But hey, let's throw some Alberta gas in that consumer price index. Why is Alberta gas down? Well, they decided to lift a lot of taxes, provincial taxes on fuel. They've lifted a lot of things like that in those scenarios. So here we are in a situation where they're flubbing the numbers, and they love to do that, especially when it comes to economics, and they love to give you stuff that sounds like it's a great thing. So here we go. And annual inflation rates, they're saying, are in a downward trend. If you look in here, I don't see much of a downward trend on this line, but unless you this is how trends work on graphs anyway. I don't know where you say that's a downward trend. Maybe just in the little past bit, maybe because you're changed the consumer price index again, like I said. But I don't remember a time where Canada in any recent history had 1% inflation rate. I don't believe that ever existed. Where do you get these numbers for this graph? But yes, largely the low interest rates for far too long, even though we don't have any savings in our country, which tells you what? If there's no savings, there's no money to be lent out, where does the new liquidity come from for people to borrow money at such a low interest rate? Well, that's the government printing it. What do you think inflation is? People will give you all kinds of different reasons for what inflation is. Inflation is it's a monetary phenomenon. When they print money, and they're going to say they didn't print money. No, they issued new currency via a digital exchange. Yeah, it's not printing because they didn't actually physically print it, but they're actually producing more currency out there, diluting the wealth that the currency is actually representative of. And that wealth is burning away inside all of our savings accounts, retirement savings plans, and all of that. Now, the whole point here was to rise interest rates to stave off inflation. This is way too early to say that it's actually having any effect on inflation. We saw this through the 1980s. The interest rates historically went to historic highs, and it took some time. It didn't take 30 days for 30 days or a year for inflation to go down. No, it took a lot longer. So This is just the numbers that they're handing out. But we do have other things that we know that are going way up. And well, CBC's list of six-figure salary employee doubled since 2015. Let's talk about spending money more. I wonder who came into power in 2015. But hey, let's look at that. The CBC doubled the amount of employees that are in six-figure salaries in the recent years, according to a new report. The report by the Canadian Taxpayer Federation, of which I'm a big fan, thank you very much, guys, for what you do, shows that between 2015 and 2020, the CBC, which is a state-run broadcaster paid for by yours truly and all of you, ladies and gentlemen, taxpayers, they added 511 employees to their list of staff that earn an annual salary of $100,000 or more. Taxpayers don't need all these CBC employees making six figures, said CTF's federal director, Franco Terrazzano, who's also been on the show before. What value are taxpayers getting from all of these extra CBC staffers with big salaries? I would say nothing. You're just getting a bunch more propaganda and a lot more of them telling you how you're saving money, because in the basket of goods, we don't put steak in there. We now put ground beef. And don't you feel better? Don't you feel better that the inflation numbers are lower, even though everything's largely gone up and prices have gone up for a lot of people? And that's not a joke. This is serious. Leave a comment in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think. Have the prices been going up crazy in your region? Maybe you live in a region where some prices have actually been dropping. Let me know in the comments down below. We're going to be going on a Japan trip starting today. Going to keep up with all the channel and what's going on as well. You're just going to see a bit of a different background, as well as check out the podcast this evening. That is a conversation I had with Chris Barber. Check that out. That's at 9 p.m. Eastern time. Check that out. It's on the channel. Set a reminder, and we'll see you in the next one. Keep on trekking.